Hey everyone, welcome to the third episode of our Persona 4 analysis. Good news, this will be the last boring episode. It's the last 20-minute period before we enter the world of the television and activate the dual world mechanic that so distinguishes video games from mere literature. The outside world of reality is the one in which we talk, walk, organize our schedules, interact in civilized ways, whereas the television world is the one in which we do less boring video gamey things, like do battles, summon supernatural forces, contend with monsters, and so on. So since that door to excitement is about to open up, I thought I'd spend the first few minutes of this third episode just walking around town, luxuriating in the boring field of activity while that's all we have. Which is ironic, because walking around a new city or town is only boring compared to what it is you could otherwise do in a video game. In reality, it's actually a kind of appealing notion that's too often postponed. It's nice to lose yourself in the adventure of unstimulating discovery. Almost blank regarding. Like, right then, I wasn't really seeing a lot of cool stuff. I wasn't going to shops, I wasn't buying from vending machines, I'm not really engaging with systems or meeting new characters, I'm not choosing dialogue options for myself, and I'm not gaining any experience points for any of my traits, like knowledge or understanding or courage. I can maybe glean information as a character. For instance, when I stopped in front of the local liquor store, I overheard a cop saying to his radio that he's in front of the family store, talking to the parents, and I can glean from that, and the information I'll shortly receive, that whatever child lives at the store is maybe in danger. But again, like when I was in the shopping district earlier, I'm mostly going toward places and learning that I don't really have anything to do here, and maybe I should come back later when prompted. But what the game's already allowing me to do is familiarize myself with what could be possible later on. In other words, what I do have now that I didn't have when I was in the shopping district earlier is the ability to go to multiple places throughout town. Nothing's happening, of course, in any of these places, but I can go there and learn that I can go there again on different days to maybe find stuff worth doing. So I can go to Junez with the knowledge that there's an elevator I can ride, not now but eventually. I can go to the floodplain with the knowledge that I can fish if I find a fishing pole. I can even linger on the street outside Dojima's house, listening to people talk outside, hearing that it'll be possible for me to plant vegetables on a plot of ground near Dojima's house. Eventually. In all of these things, this third episode presents us with the chance not to do, but to prepare to do. It presents us with the opportunity to study up and anticipate what some of the options will be in the external world. I'm reassured by the presence of the boring in life. It equips us, the boring equips us with the chance to discover, plan, and bear witness to some unfolding. The boring, like silence in classical music, is an invitation to listen and to make a plot out of what seems nothing at all. The way that a piece by John Cage might let you finally hear the sounds of the seemingly soundless music hall and lead you to realize it's not music that makes music, but a quality of attention on our part that exerts a design on sound. This kind of realization is a comforting thing, which is why I call it reassuring, a reminder that even if we're doing nothing or just doing the boring parts of life, we're still reminded that any and all excitement actually comes from us, and from what we project onto a thing. At this point, you're hanging out with Nanako again, and passing the time watching TV. Dojima again isn't home, and at this point his absence is as reliable as anything else. We find that the commotion at the crime scene was in reaction to, of course, evidence of a crime, which was this. A woman was found dead, hung from an antenna. That woman is the 27-year-old newscaster who was embroiled in that affair with the politician, stealing him away from his wife. Now, a few things here. First, the idea that 27 is just, it's very young to die. It's an age that gets younger and younger with each year of my life. And it's funny, but I guess every year life goes by, you get further and further removed from youth and believe each new year to be young. The only ironic thing there is that when you actually are young, you think every age is old, including your own. If you were 8 years old, you'd say to yourself, well, it's not like I'm a baby, it's not like I'm 7, I'm 8. We so effortfully push ourselves to lay claim to some kind of dignity at those young ages, acting under the misimpression that dignity and age are aligned, and then one day we realize that there is no dignity but grace, and there is no grace but in the gift of life, and there is no gift of life but in youth, a spirit of youth. As some guy with a bowl cut and a green outfit would say, the springtime of youth. Anyway, Nanako quickly calms herself down from the agitation visited upon her by this morose broadcast and sings along to the Junez jingle. You sing along to it too. Again, it's a nice moment of identification with Nanako. There's enough that's different between the two of you that she feels safe in identifying with you, feels she can take something comforting from your proverbial cabinets, sorting through the offerings your mere presence and receptivity to her contain. Not to return unnecessarily to the zone of boredom and powerlessness, incapacity, but in a sense, Nanako's whole life is basically the same as the day we just experienced. We can listen, we can judge, we can witness, we can internally assess and compare, but we can't do much about it yet. At this point, what Nanako most has in common with you is a sort of powerlessness, a lack of permission to act. We get up the next morning and head to school again, seeing Yosuke again crash his bicycle. He's more error-prone than we could have possibly imagined, although at least this time he's not holding his crotch in pain, but rolling around in a trash can. This too is a kind of equating of Yosuke with filth. Yosuke's associated not just with vulgarity, but more literally with trash, refuse, all that ought to be discarded. This is an indication again early on that Yosuke regards himself poorly as basically human trash. We'll soon see ample proof of his low estimation of himself, a guilt reaction surely, to the fact of his father managing the Junez store that may be putting other smaller local businesses into the trash heap. And we'll see this proof in his exaggerated, inauthentic gestures of confidence, his low, retiring moments of dissipation when confronted with others' annoyance or displeasure with him, the low, retiring resignation that is also a kind of acknowledgement or recognition that when someone hates or dismisses him, he thinks, "Oh yeah, you see me as I am. You see that I deserve to be discarded in this way." You go to school with Yosuke, and he's, in a minute, going to try and establish some kind of rapport with you, signaling that he too is a city boy, and he too sympathizes and wants to commiserate about the dudness of Inaba. He remarks how strange it is, how pathetic it is, that the local specialty is something as modest as grilled steak. Clearly, the pride of the town is no sacred cow for Yosuke. That said, his low estimation of the town is pretty consistent with Chie's view of it too. She, after all, in our last episode, was talking about how there's almost nothing at all to recommend the town, as she searched for some reason you might find it even kind of appealing. Speaking of Chie, she is about to insinuate herself and get herself invited to join the dinner, which Yosuke has offered to cover. I'd like to linger here for a second to note the two strands that get tangled together and how that tangling reveals something about the construction of Yosuke's self. At first, the offer to get some food began as an expression of thanks to you, the protagonist, for helping him out. So the first strand is gratitude, generosity. Then Chie insinuates herself and demands inclusion in the meal as payback for Yosuke having broken her DVD of Trial of the Dragon. So the second strand is apology, recompense, something punitive. These two strands get threaded together in a way that's revealing of the trouble Yosuke faces. His pure-hearted gestures toward connection, wanting to share his life with someone in thanks, get tangled up in recrimination, guilt, punishment. Wanting to connect and feeling bad about who he is are two things that are just super bonded together for Yosuke, and we can see that even here in a moment so ordinary. By the way, Yukiko, as you just saw, can't join. She rivals even you in her reticence-edged mystique. So you, Yosuke, and Chie all go eat together, Yosuke's treat. Of course, since he'd now be paying for 3 people rather than 2, his plans have changed. And he can't afford to treat everyone to grilled steak, instead taking the gang to Junez, where he treats everyone to what must be either sodas or shakes, some kind of drinkable thing. Hanging out, Chie guilelessly provokes Yosuke, portraying him as a rich boy who essentially owns the place, some prince whose father is running all the stores out of business. It's clear that Yosuke chafes at this, mostly based on a guilt affect. He feels misperceived and doesn't want people to think he'd at all either welcome wealth, its attendant privileges, and the market misfortune of others, or that he'd at all tolerate with aristocratic indifference those things, that he'd be blasé in the face of trouble. In other words, Yosuke doesn't want anyone to think that he would hurt anyone, that he'd want to hurt anyone, or that he'd be okay with anyone suffering. He wants very much to be noble, a hero, beloved. If video games have taught us anything, it's that a hero needs a princess. Saki is a slightly older girl student who works at Junez and is taking a break when Yosuke spies her. He has a puppy-doggish crush on her and is solicitous, going over to her, affecting an over-the-top courtly manner that, again, signals his deep ambivalence toward himself. He really does want to be a hero, a gentleman, a lover, an admired mature adult. But he also regards the prospect of him, this particular Yosuke, the prospect of him being a hero, a gentleman, a lover, an admired mature adult, he regards this as ridiculous and absurd. And so he undercuts himself. He lets himself be courtly toward her, but only in a way that ensures failure, crash and burn, only in a way he can walk back as a joke. She indulges him with a magnanimity shared by all teenage girls who have to deal with teenage boys, a magnanimity that lets patience and light contempt coexist as a kind of unasserted annoyance. He knows she's kind of just being nice, but even that's enough for him, so starved is he for someone to finally simultaneously like and respect him. Saki then comes up to you and tells you that it'd be great if you'd be kind to Yosuke, since he really seems to need male friends. This makes sense and calls to mind how passionately, with what hope he originally invited you to eat with him, originally tried to establish some male bond of brotherhood with you. Saki seems to know that, as a guy, you're under less pressure to afford Yosuke the consideration of polite disinterest, bare minimum pity and kindness. So she appeals to your own brand of magnanimity. Of course, she doesn't really have to do this. I think Yosuke is great, and would want to hang out with him, regardless. But she, in her utter exhaustion, gives us this last request, then goes back off to work the rest of her shift. By the way, her muttering about why did I have to leave school early the other day, it was, of course, Saki who found the woman hanging from the antenna. She's shocked by death, and it's from within that numbness that she reaches out to you and asks you to be kind to Yosuke. After some classic teasing from Chie, the three of you are about to disband when she mentions this rumor going around about the Midnight Channel. How if you put it on at night when it's raining, you'll see your soulmate. You all, as children do, agree that maybe you'll try it this evening, experiencing the flash of unity allowed in joint delusion, swearing a pact, acting a part, pretending to regard something as secretly real. It is a little curious, though, that Chie is the one to bring up the Midnight Channel. You'd expect it might be Yosuke, who otherwise seems to be the lovelorn romantic, prone to quixotic flights of fancy, and pointedly normal, quote-unquote, teenage pursuits, like investigating some superstition. But instead, it's the grounded, tomboyish Chie who raises this. One wonders who she'd like to see on the TV screen. Just guessing, but let's think about this. What we know is that Chie teased Yukiko about never having had a boyfriend, which is, of course, a great way of sidestepping whatever Chie's own conflicted feelings about her femininity might be. It's easier, of course, to ask the new boy if he thinks Yukiko is cute than if he thinks Chie herself is. We also know that Chie is more comfortable with life on a screen than anything else, as evidenced by her powerful identification with kung fu movies. What's on the screen gives her a blueprint with which to make sense of and give form to her otherwise protean feelings of ambivalence. Anyway, that's probably why she wants to see the Midnight Channel, in the hopes that the screen can help her find love as easily as it's shown her martial arts moves and other aspirational aspects of her own self. She wants you and Yosuke to join her in this because if you guys are doing it too, then it's more normal and less a reflection of her own muted needs. I'm just going to linger on that hangout for another minute more. It's hard for me sometimes to conceive of the sheer optimism of will required for people, especially young people, to try and connect with each other. Seems to me sometimes that we all present such a network of complicated self-evasions, defensive deceptions of others, such intersecting lines of self-castigation and unwarranted hostility. Who could summon the effort to attempt to be honest with other people, considering all that is what we're contending with? It reminds me of a line from a Harold Brodke story where he's being picked up by his dad. That's the whole story, just a childhood memory of being picked up by his dad. He writes this line, "What web of jealousy trembles at every human movement? What detectives we have to be." I love that line, and I think it's so true. So much effort and time is taken up in trying to uncover, again, going back to the song Shadow World, the one can't be without the true other, so let's get together and see what we can uncover. So much effort and time is taken up in trying to uncover what it is I really want, what it is you really want, what it is we're maybe avoiding. Well, it can all seem beleaguering, is what I'm saying, so I'm glad that here at least there are the creature comforts of a drink of Junez, as some animal consolation amid all the psychological difficulty these kids are going through. For a change, Dojima's home, and watching television with you all. He says work's been piling up, and it's worth noting, by the way, how crushing, painful and corrupting a force work exerts on almost all the adults in the world of Persona 4. For your parents, work has literally separated them from you and from their home country. For Dojima, it takes him away from his daughter, from his real life. And for King Moron, of course, work is something that allows him to exercise his bitterness toward the innocent young. On the TV, you see a girl disguised in standard blurred-out voice effects style, talking about finding the woman hung from the antenna, and you immediately recognize her as Saki. One last thing I want to note here is how significant obfuscation remains even this early in the game. The fog enshrouds the town, a murder mystery plagues the townspeople, even a student you met earlier today is now blurred out and partially hidden, even as they're exposed by the news program. The only significance of all this obfuscation is that you yourself remain uniquely perceptive even amid these visibility blockades. This harkens back to the dream you had last night, where you're wandering through the fog of this other place drawn by a voice asking if you'd like to know the truth. Your pursuit of truth or desire for it is what lets you see through the otherwise impenetrable cloaks of kind of cloistered, foggy world. Dojima is grousing about how the media is unnecessarily stirring things up, fouling up his ability to clearly pursue the case in a more contained way. And in a moment or two, you're going to go to bed, eager to see if this Midnight Channel is everything it's cracked up to be. And that will be the subject of the next episode. So thanks again for watching.
A police force who can't even figure out if this is an accident or a homicide? We'll be right back after these messages.
At Jeunesse, every day is Customer Appreciation Day. Come see for yourself and get in touch with our products. Every day's great at your Jeunesse.
Every day's great at your Jeunesse. Hey, Dad, can we go to Jeunesse together sometime? No?